Hey guys, it's Mr. Coley, but you kind of knew that already. So, good morning. You guys have already learned about the cell cycle. In fact, the cell cycle as it goes with interphase, anyway. But now we're going to be learning about the whole linchpin or the whole reason why the cell cycle exists, and the reason that we actually can go from one cell to 100 trillion cells. I don't have that many fingers, okay? And so this is called mitosis. And mitosis is division of the nucleus. It's not necessarily cell division because that's cytokinesis. But the nucleus, the division of the nucleus, is the most important part in the entire cell cycle because that's where the DNA is. And that's if something goes wrong there, then you have big, big problems. And we'll talk about those problems later on in the unit. So mitosis has 4 phases, okay? Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Some people call it telophase, but I think that's kind of weird, so I like to say telophase. Yeah. So if you put them in order, they go in that order: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. You can make acronyms out of that. My favorite is, and I've stolen this from other biology teachers, is please make a taco, right? Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. Please make a taco. Because please make a taco. So now you have no excuse to never forget it. So that's one way that I like to help remember the phases and how they work in each order. How I kind of like to mirror that with my hands is we kind of use our hands to symbolize what the DNA is doing. Okay, so everyone is going to hold up their hands, and we're going to go like this. Okay. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of you are not holding your hands up right now, so I'm going to wait until you do. Kind of like those people at Disney World or Dora the Explorer, all right? We're going to wait, and we're going to pretend that it's a live feed, and I can see all of you until all of your hands are up like this, okay? All right. So, are they up like this? Please make sure they are. Just play along with me, please, please. So when your hands are like this is going to be called prophase, okay? Prophase. Your DNA is all contained in the nucleus. So prophase, and then you're going to go like this, and that's metaphase, okay? So prophase, metaphase, anaphase, okay? So your DNA is separating, and telophase. So telophase, you have now 2 nuclei, right? So a nucleus and a nucleus, okay? So that's another great way I like to remember that. We're going to go into the notes now, but I just wanted to do that visual, right? So the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase to kind of get your brain going to kind of make the connections, okay? All right, so we are going to begin. All right, so mitosis. Recognize that picture from the cell cycle slides? So we are going to continue with that because it's cool. All right, mitosis. So mitosis, as I said before, is going to be division of the nucleus. And so it has 4 stages: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And you can see that in like the cool animation to the right. So you have, there's prophase, and so you can see that they condense into chromosomes, and then you have like these cool little spindle fibers, and that's going to be metaphase right there, anaphase, the chromosomes separate, and then telophase, you have 2 nucleus, and then that's cytokinesis. Okay? So that is going to be mitosis in a nutshell. So prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And the purpose of mitosis, this division of the nucleus, is to produce 2 genetically identical daughter nuclei. Okay? we usually call things when they've descended from something else is the daughter. So you have like the mother nuclei, and then as that divides, it's going to be 2 daughter nuclei, okay? And this is going to occur in somatic cells. And so I think we talked about the term somatic, and really that just means body cells. So all cells except for the sex cells, and our sex cells being sperm in males, eggs in females. So mitosis occurs in everything but the sex cells. So all of your other cells in your body go through mitosis, okay? All right. Just like that, the image is so alluring. You just watch it over and over again because mitosis is so exciting. All right. Okay, so like I said before, here it is spelled out again for you. Prophase, please. Metaphase, make. Anaphase, telophase, taco. Please make a taco. You should have that written down already because why wouldn't you? Because it's a taco, right? Oh, delicious. Way more meat than you get at Taco Bell. All right, so prophase. So just as interphase is the longest stage in the cell cycle, prophase is the longest phase in mitosis. So at this point, you have your DNA, which is also called chromatin at this point. It's going to condense. And so that when it condenses, it forms chromosomes, okay? And so we talked about chromosomes before, I believe in evolution, where we have 46 chromosomes, okay? So 23 pairs, which means that we have 2 chromosome 1s, 2 chromosome 2s, 2 chromosome 3s, all the way up to chromosome 23s, right? So your chromosomes are going to condense, so they're going to be into pieces, because this is going to make it much easier when they're dividing, okay? And so your chromosomes at this point have been duplicated, so they're attached, so you have like really 4 copies of chromosome 1, right? So a copy of one of them from your mom, and then a copy of one of them from your dad, and that moves on up the ladder. So they're all ready, because that happened in the synthesis phase of interphase, and so your chromosomes are ready to separate, okay? So the chromosomes are going to condense, and then your nuclear membrane dissolves, right? So that everything that holds the DNA inside is going to break away, okay? And so this is going to leave the chromosomes out in the open, like in the cytoplasm. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, we have all these things that destroy the DNA in the cytoplasm. But because that DNA is so tightly wound up, it's safe, okay? So at this point, and most cellular processes at this point are not working because they're very dedicated to dividing the cell at this point. So you have in animal cells, you have this centriole that is going to form. So these 2 centrioles, right? So those were kind of, when you were coloring them, they kind of look like the churros. So you can see those 2 yellow dots. They're going to move to opposite ends of the cell, and then these little spindle fibers form. So those are the little lines that are extending to the purple chromosome. They're going to go and they're going to attach at the center of the chromosome, okay? They call that the centromere, or sometimes you call it the kinetochores, but it just attaches at that center point, and then the next step is going to go. So this is going to be the centrioles. So think about like a puppet, like think Pinocchio. The centrioles are going to have those spindle fibers, and the centriole is really going to control the chromosomes. So it can pull it up and down and move it around and kind of orient them. And then that's kind of cool. So the spindle, so yeah, it's awesome. And then the spindle fibers will be attached, and then that's going to really direct how mitosis is going to happen. So a lot is happening during prophase, and sometimes some textbooks, and then of course, well, depending on how complex the textbook or how complex the lecture, they'll classify prophase as like early, middle, and late prophase, depending on where they are. So like the picture on the left would be considered early prophase, and then the picture on the right would be considered late prophase. Okay? All right, moving on. So this is our please of please make a taco. So after prophase, back to metaphase, then you can see that those are X's, right? And then when you go forward to anaphase, then this is going to be the X's are being ripped apart. And so those are the two sister chromatids. So your chromosomes were copies. So each X was two identical copies of the chromosome. And then when they're pulled apart, they're considered the chromatid, and each one is going to go to opposite sides of the cell. And that's going to be pulled apart by those spindle fibers and the centriole. And so how they pull apart is actually the spindle fiber starts to collapse at the centriole side. So it's kind of like, think of it like Pac-Man eating up all the little balls, right? But as the balls are eaten, then the spindle fiber shrinks and gets pulled into the centriole. And in this way, because the chromosomes are being pulled apart, we ensure that we have one copy of each of our 46 chromosomes in each of the nuclei. And again, you can see this with the cool dye. You have your chromosomes, which now are dyed red, and they're being pulled apart by the green spindle fibers to opposite ends of the cell. And now we're at telophase. So at this point, you have your chromosomes are at opposite ends of the cell, so they're separated from each other. So the spindle fibers are no longer needed. So the spindle fibers will start to break apart and disintegrate. And because they're disintegrating, you also have your chromosomes, and they need to be protected and encased again in the nuclear membrane or the nuclear envelope. There's so many words for that term. So your nuclear membrane starts to form around each set of chromosomes now. So you can see that in that lower picture. You have your purple chromosomes, then you have the little white pieces that are going to be the new nuclear membranes, and they're going to form around and seal the DNA in. And as that nuclear membrane forms to kind of protect the chromosomes are going to start to uncoil. So they're going to unwind. So they were really tightly wound. They were like really tight X's, and now they are unwinding. They're loosening up. And you can see the beginning of cytokinesis. So you see how that cell is starting to pinch in the middle. So remember that telophase is the last phase of mitosis, and mitosis is the division of the nucleus. Okay? The actual division of the cell is cytokinesis, so division of the cytoplasm itself. But you can see that it's starting to happen, and it usually happens simultaneously with telophase. But you need to make sure the DNA is on opposite sides first, and then the cell can start to divide itself. And then again, you can see this with spindle fibers. You have the chromosomes on either end, the sister chromatids. And then you can see that it's starting to pinch in the middle, so it's starting to be very much two cells. Okay, so that's telophase. Are we good so far? Cool. So that was the please make a taco. And then cytokinesis. So the cell pinches apart. So in animal cells, the cell will actually pinch apart, and then you have the two cells. In plant cells, just like you can see in the GIF at the lower left corner, you have a new cell plate that forms. So you're going to have, which will become a new cell wall. So that forms down the middle of the two cells, and then you have your new cell. Because it'd be kind of weird, because plants are so much more structured when they're dividing, because they're very rigid, right? So remember that I said that if we had cell walls, when we moved our arms, we would literally rip everything apart in our arms, and that would not be good at all. Because then you have splinters of like cellulose like hanging out in your tissue, and then that would, it would just be awful. So, but plants don't need to walk around and move unless you're an ant, but then again, that's for another time. So, you have your cytokinesis, the cell pinches apart, and then you have two cells where once you had one. And remember that all of our somatic cells, so all 100 trillion cells, have the exact same DNA in them. So if we wanted to really think of it, we are an organism composed of 100 trillion clones, right? Each cell being identical to the other cell. And that's kind of cool, right? So cytokinesis, this is the division of the cytoplasm. Mitosis, division of the nucleus. And that is so awesome. So this one, I don't believe you need to write down the table, but this is just kind of an interesting food for thought, so to speak, that different cells are going to divide at different rates, so even in our own bodies. So the rate of cell division is going to vary with the needs of the cell. So do write down that. That's going to be very important. And here is a list of all of the different cells that can divide. So our skin cells, their approximate lifespan of a skin cell is about 2 weeks. So each of your cells that compose your skin, which is our body's largest organ, only last about 2 weeks, and then they're pushed up into the epidermis, right? So the dead layer of skin, and they kind of form a protective barrier. So it's constantly like I don't know what you'd say it would be, like a conveyor belt type thing. So you're pushing up new cells, and then like obviously like we're going to shed dead skin cells all the time. So remember that a lot of the dust in your house is actually dead skin cells, which is kind of creepy. Our red blood cells, they take about 4 months. So they live about 4 months. So red blood cells are made in our bone marrow, and then they are released, and they carry all of the oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout our body, in our blood, right? A liver cell, it's about 300 to 500 days. So liver cells are also very important. They filter out toxins. They store, short-term sugars, that sort of thing. And it's kind of thing when people like are alcoholics or do drugs or things like that, they really tax the liver, because what the liver does is it actually collects all those toxins, and it makes like kamikaze cells almost. So kamikaze, think World War II, where they, the bombers, the Japanese bombers would fly their planes into different targets and kill themselves. Liver cells work the same way. They take in all the toxins, and then they basically they die because it's toxic, and but in that way they can protect the organism as a whole. So when people do a lot of drugs or a lot of drinking, that's why a lot of times they have problems with their liver over time. Your intestines, so the internal lining of your intestines is about 4 to 5 days, so that's due to you're absorbing a lot of things, but then of course there's a lot of acids and that sort of thing that constantly are being replaced. So your intestine cells and your stomach cells, they're under a lot of stress. And then of course your the intestine that's not the internal lining can live for almost 16 years. And then, like I said earlier in the last slideshow, muscle cells, nerve cells, fat cells, they're going to be ones that are going to be, they'll never divide. So you're born with all the cells you'll ever have for those types. Okay? Cool. And the summary, so you can see that as you start in the middle left, you have your cell in interphase, right? And then it's going to start to go into prophase, right? So that's early prophase. Your nuclear envelope starts to dissolve. Your chromosomes condense. Late prophase, you can see that your chromosomes are going to start to line up at the middle. Spindle fibers are forming. Metaphase, you have everything lined up in the middle. Spindle fibers are attached to everything. Anaphase, you have your sister chromatids are pulled to opposite ends of the cell. Telophase, you have that's kind of like late anaphase here. The chromatids are at the opposite side of the cell. You have condensation in telophase, so you can see that the nucleus is forming for each cell. And then cytokinesis, you have 2 little cells, okay? Which is kind of cool. Ta-da! Summary of the cell cycle. Don't you guys feel smarter now? And then, of course, the very fun cartoon at the end. Like, you have your chromosome here. On the right, the orange guy, and then the squiggly guy is the uncondensed DNA, which we call chromatin. He's like, dude, mitosis starts in 5 minutes. I can't believe you're not condensed yet. So, kind of funny. You'll find tons of jokes about that. So now you've learned about mitosis, cytokinesis, and interphase. So those are the 3 huge phases of the cell cycle. And now you are so much smarter, and you can pass on all of your knowledge all the time. Cool. And then, of course, here's some links that we're not going to go into today.